Today I'm going to talk about excess deaths in mortality with Meep. And yes, this has to do with COVID. I can talk about excess deaths due to other things later. But I want to start out with this tweet by James Tozer, who is data journalist for The Economist. In April 16th, they published an article, and I'll be there in a moment. I'll provide all the links in the notes for the video. From today onwards, The Economist will be tracking excess mortality from COVID-19, but just excess mortality in general. So this is the linked article from James Tozer tracking COVID-19 excess deaths across countries. Though it's just excess mortality in general. And the issue here is some people argue there's an undercounting of COVID deaths, and some say there's an overcounting. And it may differ region to region. Okay, so that's something to think about. The issue is some places are not categorizing deaths as COVID deaths unless you've had a positive COVID-19 test done or you were clinically diagnosed. So that's it's being undercounted argument. Some say it's being overcounted, that if you had a positive COVID-19 test, even if something else killed you, say a heart attack, they would count it, or like say a car accident, they'd count it as a COVID-19 death. And there's a lot of jokes going around. I'm not going to show any of them. So that's the argument. Let's look at these graphs and what they're doing. Okay, so here's the first one, Lombardy. Selection of communes covering 67% of the population in Lombardy. It's weekly total deaths. That's the height of this whole graph. And then the orange region, and I don't like that they're doing a region like this. It really should be bars because it's week by week. It's not continuous. Anyway, it helps visualize it. So the orange part are the official COVID deaths. And here's the important part. Here's the dashed line. Doop, 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 doop. This is the expected number of deaths, I think, compared to prior year mortality, average mortality. Okay, and there is a seasonality to it. It can have been a little lower in January because, this flu season wasn't so bad compared to some other prior flu seasons, and that may be. And here's the argument about this graph. You have these deaths, like peaking over, total deaths peaking over 5,000 in the week ending March 27th, and of that extra 4,000 deaths over the baseline, only 2,000 of them were identified as COVID-19 deaths. The argument can be that all these other deaths in the expected range might actually be COVID deaths. Now, just to take a little bit of a tangent, with the lockdowns, and they do have a line for each of these indicating if there's a lockdown, shelter in place, stay at home, etc., that there may be increases in cause of death due to other causes, such as suicide, overdose, drug overdose, domestic violence, all sorts of things that are, pretty unpleasant. And on the other side, maybe there's a reduction in traffic deaths. It depends on where you are. Like New York City, you're not really expecting traffic deaths to be a big component of deaths to begin with because people are on the subway. Anyway, this is Lombardy. Let's go down to the next one. Here we go, Spain. And again, we're seeing this curve that's non-COVID deaths above that expected death line. This one is not so bad from a percentage standpoint. So let's just look up here. From a percentage standpoint, week ending March 20th, perhaps there was a gross undercounting of COVID cases. Not so bad, not such a big percentage disparity here for Spain. And they have some regions, Madrid, Castile, and La Mancha, Castile and Leon. So some of them, maybe they're pretty good at catching the COVID cases and identifying them. So here's France. This is an interesting one. So maybe there was an undercounting in early weeks, but once we get towards April 2nd, April 9th, are they overcounting COVID deaths? Maybe, Maybe not, because maybe the difference here comes from reductions in deaths due to other causes, true reductions like traffic and maybe some other accidental death types. But again, it differs by region. So Ile-de-France, which is where Paris is, seems to have an undercounting of death, maybe. Grand East, some other places. I don't know French geography very well. I know where Paris is, and that's about it. I am sorry. England and Wales, again, maybe they're not undercounting too much. Maybe there was some overcounting in the early weeks. That said, perhaps, well, okay, London, maybe there's not so many traffic fatalities. Overcounting in London, perhaps, West Midlands, and undercounting elsewhere. That's potentially true. Netherlands looks like there is growing COVID cases, but they're not really identifying COVID deaths pretty well. Here's New York City, and this one, I like this one as a graph. Sorry, I don't like the stats per se. I have some other excess graphs. I'm not going to talk about that right now. New York City, note, we've got this huge run-up in number of deaths, and actually, it seems to be pretty good at identifying the COVID deaths if all the excess mortality is coming from COVID-19. Okay? And yeah, it's in thousands, week ending April 3rd. And you'll notice they have different reporting weeks. It differs country to country. If you can't get at the Economist article, because of course it's paywalled, I will link to the specific Twitter thread so you can see the graphs he did in April 16th. Perhaps he's done follow-ups since then. I'm not going to go look for it right now. Other people have tried looking at this, so first, I haven't looked at these data yet. France, Germany, Italy. These are trying to get at excess mortality. Total deaths are much easier to count than deaths by cause. That's why, like the total death count, you can get approximately from the CDC pretty quickly after the end of the year. Not a problem. But by cause of death, it takes a bit longer. And also, a lot of people don't realize there is recorded a primary cause of death, but you can have multiple causes of death on the death certificate. And those data are available through in aggregate. I need to be very clear. Generally, you're not getting at a specific person's information. That said, there is no privacy when you're dead. And for the last person I want to show for excess deaths before any final comments, Lyman Stone attempted just very quick year over year, March 2020 versus March 2019 increase in number of deaths. Okay. Now, for most of these places, we're expecting the peak of deaths perhaps to be in April. He has New Jersey, Portugal, Sweden, New York, France, the UK, Netherlands, Spain, and Italy. That said, and he has it in his own notes, I will provide links so you can read up on this yourself. Here is the issue with some of the total deaths. You still have to be careful because you saw with Lombardy, it said 67% of communes. Generally, you don't have 100% of localities that are reporting deaths. And it's not fully counted yet. This goes beyond the person is off for the weekend counting. There's often data cleanup you have to do and that kind of thing. The way he got the Italy number was that it was only a certain percentage of the whole to begin with, and then it was trued up. But that true up may not be true, so you need to be careful. That said, so yes, Italy, at least northern Italy, has been hard hit. Spain has been hit hard too. New York, this was just March. We saw the big run up, and let's look at this again. This was not in the tweets because this has been a update since the April 16th. Just huge increase, huge percentage increase in number of deaths. And at the beginning of April, so that's not captured in the March numbers. So, that's a problem with the peak. But here's the thing. It's hard to fake total number of deaths. Yes, you can be a place like China and have iffy stats on all sorts of things, like GDP growth and all of that sort of thing. But it is hard to hide the number of people who have died. Uh, a dead body is a dead body. They do out eventually. Yes, there are stories of people who die in their apartments alone and you don't find them until later. Yes, I know examples, real life examples of that. That's not a huge percentage of deaths for any cause. And people are looking for some people, but that is actually something to think about. A lot of times you get a welfare check or something, you haven't seen somebody in a while. But I think nowadays in the online world, it's more you haven't heard from them. They haven't been on Facebook. They haven't, called you or texted you or something. And you're a close family member. You might call the police to have them go around and check to see if they're there or if something has happened. And again, I know personal examples in my family. That's not pleasant. In any case, yes, COVID really, really is causing an increase in deaths in very specific places. It does seem that in some places, so Lombardy was hard hit. They're picking, Spain was hard hit. France was hit, but from a percentage standpoint, it doesn't seem too bad. England and Wales, that's a pretty large percentage increase. Netherlands, it seems to keep rising, but New York City is the one that's just amazing increase. And of course, that's where some of the worst stuff is going on with regards to coronavirus in the United States right now. Whether it's that big a problem in places that don't have a subway that millions of people use every day, and it's the highest density living area in the United States, well, we'll be finding out over time. But no, this is not faked. People really are dying from this. It is pretty bad. So, enjoy the stay at home. I'm enjoying my Flaviar samples. Highly recommend. And I'll be talking more about mortality trends in general later on. See ya.